Hey y'all, welcome to or welcome back to our very bookish channel. And this is an exciting video because we are getting into our Halloween challenge. Jen and I decided to come up with some prompts, and in case you missed our October TBR video, what is wrong with you? Go back and watch it. My husband picked 3 prompts from a list for us to read for the month of October, and we're vlogging, of course. And the first prompt that we are going to be doing in this video is we're going to be reading a book that was released in the 90s. So excited for this. I'm not gonna lie, it was a little bit hard for me to pick a book because most of the horror books that I could find that were good or had high ratings from the 90s were teen books like Christopher Pike and R.L. Stine. And I think Jen's reading a Christopher Pike book, but that's just not really something I was like feeling. I didn't really want to read a teen book. So I had to kind of go on a hunt, do some research. I found lots of authors from the 90s. Obviously, Stephen King wrote a lot of books, but I just wasn't really in the mood for him. I actually just read the first book, The Gunslinger, which is the first book of the Tower series or something by him. It was really short. I read it all in one day. It was good. I'm going to keep going. But I just really wasn't in the mood for Stephen King. And I found a bunch of Dean Koontz books. So I did go to my local library and just browse the aisles for books and then check the copyright dates. But they didn't really have a horror section. The horror is just mixed in with all of the other fiction books. So that was kind of a bust. But on my way out of the library, I thought, you know what, let me go just browse the library book sale. So I was looking over the books on the library for sale, and I came across some books, y'all, and I just want to show them to you real quick. I got this is Elisa Jewell, Then She Was Gone. I'm really scared to read this book because I know it has to do with a missing child, and I don't know. The anxiety I get with missing children books is just, it's real. And it's not the fun anxiety. So, yeah, it's just, it's too much, but this was only $1 at the library sale. It's in really good condition. It is Lisa Jewell, so I thought I would give it a try. I also found Rock, Paper, Scissor by Alice Feeney. We just read Alice Feeney, An Arc for Alice Feeney. She's putting out Beautiful Ugly in January, and it's a great book, and I really enjoyed it, and I want to read more of hers. So when I saw this, it's also in really good condition. When I saw this for $1, I had to grab it. And then finally, I saw a Dean Koontz book, and it just so happens to have a copyright date in the 90s. So this is Fear Nothing by Dean Koontz, and it says fear nothing will make you fear almost everything, and it was published in 1998. So this is the book I'm going to read. I'm in the mood to read a physical book, and I found this was actually only 50 cents, and it is, I mean, you can tell it's old. It's kind of yellow on the edges of the pages, but it is in really good condition. There's no cracked spines or anything. Like, I doubt whoever even owned this book probably didn't even read it. Just had it for a long time and then decided to donate it and get rid of it. I'm just ready. I'm ready to dive right into this and then scare myself a little bit.
I am going to be starting Halloween challenge number 1, which is going to be the book that came out in the 90s, and I'm doing Christopher Pike. The one I had found at Secondhand Charles was The Midnight Club. So today I am going to run some errands. I really want to buy some of the older Christopher Pike books, the ones I loved when I was a kid, and I haven't been to the Dayton Dollar Swap store in a while. I figured they would probably have some, at least I'm hoping. I'm going to take you guys along with me. I'm also going to pick up the pumpkins that I put off the last time I was at this flower, I don't want to call it a shop, it's seasonal because they aren't there during the winter months, obviously. I have mums on my porch, and I really want to get some pumpkins. I also have to go do a return. Have you guys ever bought, like, I don't buy my clothes online because I feel like it's really hard to pick clothes and have them fit when you buy them online, but I don't always have time to go try things on in a store. I bought pants for work, and when I got them, they have hardly any pockets, and that drives me nuts because I'm always putting stuff in my pockets. So I gotta run over to Macy's and return that, but come along with me to Dayton Dollar Swap. I'm going to show you what I find there. Maybe I'll even find more stuff other than Christopher Pike books, who knows. I'm hoping that this trip is more successful than it was the last time I was there. So next time you'll see me, I'll be going into Dayton Dollar Swap, and let's hope we find some great books. I'm really excited. I found some of the Christopher Pike. 2 of them I think I'm definitely going to read for this vlog because it'll probably go pretty quick since they're YA. I was a little disappointed that I didn't see anything else that I wanted. No thrillers whatsoever that were really speaking to me. They tend to have a lot of really major authors like James Patterson, Tom Clancy. They do have Jodi Picoult, but I have the couple at home that I haven't read yet. I just need to read. I didn't really find anything that was speaking to me, unfortunately, but they were really cutely decorated for Halloween. They had no Stephen King, which I thought was kind of interesting, and I asked if they had any. I didn't even attempt Frida McFadden. I already have all her books. I've gotten all of them at home of the ones I haven't read yet, so I just have to read them when we do the next vlog. I am headed for a couple more errands, but pumpkins is one of them, so come along as I pick up my fall porch decorations.
update time. I am in the middle of chapter 6, which is page 54, and that's not too far into the book, but oh my gosh, I am like amazed with Dean Koontz' storytelling ability and his writing ability. I just like, I don't know why. He's a very, very popular author. He has like so many books out. I think he's still putting books out to this day. So he has like decades of putting out books, and I don't know why. I've never read him before, and I don't know why this is surprising, but I really am liking this book so far. The setup has been really good. The main character is a 28-year-old man, and he has a very rare disease, and it does tell you the name of the disease. I think they call it X disease or something. It's short for the medical term, which I obviously am not going to remember or know how to pronounce. But he has this disease that when his skin and his eyes are exposed to any kind of light, normally in normal people it will damage your skin cells, but your cells have a way to repair themselves, and he has this disease that makes his skin cells not able to repair. So any damage from light at all that he gets in his skin or eyes is cumulative. It doesn't repair. So a lot of these people with this super rare disease, they don't live very long because they very quickly develop skin cancers, or they lose their eyesight, you know, where their eyes are damaged and don't repair themselves. So he's a very interesting character because he has that kind of quirk about him, and he has to go out only at nighttime, and even at nighttime he has to be very careful about exposing himself to light. It's extremely rare. A lot of times, because the people that carry these genes and have this disease don't live long enough to be able to reproduce. So that's one reason it's super rare, but it's also just a very, very recessive gene that very, very few people get. And if you have the gene, it's recessive, and mostly it doesn't affect you, but you can carry it down to your children. So he has this really rare disease, which is really interesting. I think a lot of main characters that have some kind of disability or something are extremely interesting. It just adds like that layer to them. Again, I'm talking about layers in books, but I think it adds an interesting quirk and layer. So I find that very cool and interesting. And in the very beginning of this book, he is called to go to hospice where his dad is dying. So he goes, and his dad apologizes to him. He says, "I'm really sorry for the inheritance." And he's not talking about money. It's very clear. His dad says, "Not money. I'm not worried about that. But I'm talking about the other inheritance." And the main character assumes that his dad's talking about the disease he inherited. But I'm beginning to think his dad is talking about something else, because shortly after his dad dies, the young man goes to the crematory to see his dad's body, and his dad wanted to be cremated with his mom's picture, so he goes to put the picture with his dad's body, and he stumbles across a very nefarious group of people who are switching out his dad's body for another hitchhiker that one of the guys supposedly killed. So they're switching his dad's body, and he doesn't know why. And so he's kind of embarked on this journey of figuring out why they switched his dad's body and why kill someone to replace the body, because you could have just put ashes of anything. Like if they were going to not burn his dad's body, he says, you know, they could have burned a log and put ashes of a log in an urn. Like he wouldn't have known the difference. So it's just very, very weird. So very, very kind of creepy vibes, very weird. I'm just like really into trying to figure out what's going on with this book. I'm really enjoying the writing and the storytelling in this book so far. It's been really easy to read, and just enjoying the main character. So I'm just gonna keep reading, and I will be back with more updates.
I barely started the Midnight Club, and I got a little nervous because the first character, and I don't know how to pronounce her name, it's Ilonka. She talks about having just gone through chemo. And if you've watched any of our vlogs, I'm not always comfortable reading about characters with cancer going through chemo. since I had gone through it myself, and sometimes it's just hard to read about. I always have just this fear after having conquered cancer that it's going to come back, because there is a likelihood when you battle cancer that it comes back. In the spring, it will be 5 years that I have been in remission or cancer free. I think it's less likely to come back. Obviously, it can always come back. So I don't know how much they're going to talk about cancer and chemo. I may end up having to put it down because of that. What's funny is I had already ordered another Christopher Pike book on eBay. It was one I haven't read yet. It's called Season of Passage, and that's supposed to deliver today. But I am going to keep going and try to keep reading, just because I don't want, you know, one line to make me not want to keep going. But we'll see. I'm going to keep going, and I'll let you guys know. I've read a little further. I'm continuing on. And the Midnight Club is a bunch of the teens, I guess you would call. I don't know if they say their age, but a teens meet at midnight that are at this hospice. And it turns out that all of them have something related to cancer. And they are bonding over telling, not ghost stories, but like horror stories at midnight. And that's as far as I got, is they have met at midnight and they started telling each other stories that are pretty much just horror stories. I also got in the mail the Christopher Pike Season of Passage that I am also going to read, because Midnight Club's going to go super fast. And I'm going to read my first Christopher Pike adult novel. And I think this also was in the 90s, I'm pretty sure. 1992. So it still fits the Halloween challenge for this. I will let you guys know how the rest of the Midnight Club goes. It's a very short book, so it shouldn't take me too long, but I might give you an update before I end. Stay tuned. All right, I was right. This went very, very quickly. And I don't think I read this back when I was reading Christopher Pike books, because it did not feel familiar at all. And it also didn't really feel completely like a Christopher Pike book that I remember, because I don't know how frightening I really feel this one was. It was almost, I want to say the word like metaphysical. It was about past lives and where do we go when we die. And the Midnight Club is mostly the sick kids getting together at midnight and telling stories, but they were telling like past lives that they feel they've had and where they're going after they die. So it was just strange. I don't even know if I would say it was really like horror. I know it's YA, but still. It didn't give me the, I guess, like nostalgic feeling I was expecting in reading a Christopher Pike from what I read when I was younger. I don't think I read this one. At least I don't remember it. I did start the Season of Passage, and what's strange is I'm not even that far in. It's like literally 15 pages. But again, it doesn't say it's about this on the back, but it's about a trip to Mars. There's a girl who's getting ready to go to Mars, and the previous crew that had gone to Mars, no one knows what happened to them, and they're kind of on this mission to see, I guess, what happened. And it's set in the year 2002, which is kind of funny. It was, written in the early 90s, out in 1992, but this Mars mission is in 2002. And at first I was thinking, oh, do I really want to read this? Because it's, again, not really feeling like horror. But I reread the back, and I feel it might still be more horrifying than what I just read by the Midnight Club. I'm going to keep going, but it is kind of longer, so I'm worried that this vlog is going to end up taking too long because of that. But I think we're already kind of behind anyway. I'm going to keep going, and hopefully it's good. I'll be back.
Boo Boo, you're in my spot. You're in my spot, Bella Sue. All right, y'all. I just wanted to read, I just read a short little paragraph and I just wanted to read it to you because I find the writing in this book to be so, I don't know, I don't know what's the good word for it. It's like the writing uses adjectives so well. Like the descriptions of things in this book are so detailed but not overwhelming. And you just like it's very like, even though this is a darker book, the writing itself is just kind of poetic, I think. Like, and there's been a lot of really good lines and really good paragraphs writing. I'm just really enjoying this writing style. So I just thought I would read a little paragraph that I just read that I thought was fun. There was a siren singing, and only I could hear her dangerous song, though I was afraid of wrecking the rocks of truth. This hypnotic melody was one I couldn't resist. So I don't know. I just thought that was a pretty line, and I just find these. I'm not really a reader that really pays close attention to the writing. I am a horrible writer. I did not as good in English. I'm much more proficient in math and science than English and writing and literature and all of that. So like I am by no means any expert at writing or anything. And I don't really pay a lot of attention to, you know, quotes in books or, you know, memorable like little sayings and things. Like that's not something I usually do while I'm reading books. But I've come across several sentences like that in this book that I've just really thought were very pretty and I've just enjoyed. And it was just a very unique, creative way of describing something. But he's also used a lot of words that you don't hear very often. And I'm just enjoying it, you know, getting a little bit broader vocabulary, especially with descriptive things. Like I just have had a good time with the writing, and that's something that's not usual for me. I don't usually pay that much attention to the writing. So I just thought I would share that with you guys.
This one is really interesting to me. I am about 100 pages in. I honestly started to think at first I was going to DNF because I just wasn't expecting it to be a Mars mission horror book. I still don't know what it's going to end up being, but everything I've read so far is about a doctor. Her name is Lauren, and she is getting ready to go to Mars. It's the years 2002 to 2004. She has a sister and a fiance at home, and it's a buildup of her getting ready to leave and then leaving on this mission. A couple things happen before they leave that are kind of foreshadowing something. I'm not sure what, but the Russian crew that had already gone to Mars is missing. No one knows what happened to them, or seemingly doesn't know what happened to them. And they're going to the same spot to kind of determine what happened. And right before they leave, the President of the United States meets with them and shows them a picture that they've all seen from Mars and points out a detail just to let them know kind of what to expect. I'm not going to say anything in case anyone wants to read this and doesn't want to get a spoiler for it. And it intrigued me. It intrigued me because it makes me wonder what's going on. I'm going to keep going, even though it's kind of a long book and I'm not getting it much of a chance to read. I am very curious though, so I want to keep going, and I will let you guys know an update. I'm going to do a quick update. I've been reading way too late tonight and I have to go to work tomorrow, but this book has sucked me in. It's kind of crazy how much I have gotten sucked into this book, especially thinking I was going to DNF it. And it's just, there's a lot of things I can't say because it would spoil it if anyone wants to read this, even though it's a book from the 90s. I'm not even sure if it's still in print. I need to check on that to see if it's still in print. They are on Mars and just some crazy things are happening. That's all I can really say. And it's really just interesting, and I can see how this is horror. It is horrifying, many of the things. I'm trying to think if there is even a way to say it that wouldn't be a spoiler. Not that I can think of at the minute, but I just read some shocking things. thought it was going to go in a couple directions and it isn't. So I'm not sure what I would even be able to say or what I'm even thinking about with this. I'm not sure if the crew can go back to Earth. Just want to see what happens and see after everything that has occurred on Mars. And it's one of those things that I tend to do this from time to time, especially if I'm really interested in a book and the subject material. I ended up looking some things up about Mars, and obviously Christopher Pike had looked things up and had researched, and I didn't know some things like the temperature of Mars based, I'm assuming, on all of the rovers that we have sent there. The average temperature is -85 degrees, mostly terrain and mountainous, but there was a volcano there that's like the size of New Mexico. And it might even be the volcano that they come across in here. I'm not sure, but it does mention how big it is. Anyway, I could go on and on, but I really need to get to bed. And what's funny is August I had on my TBR, not even knowing. I think I was going to read it because I've been trying to read some classics, but I literally had The Martian Chronicles on my August TBR and I didn't get to it, but it's making me want to read it now because the character in this book, when they're going to Mars, they have a couple books on board. One of them is Dune and one of them is Martian Chronicles, and he was describing it because he was reading it and he was describing it, and I think it's supposed to be foreshadowing. It's just interesting. I do want to finish this soon because we want to get our Halloween challenge episodes up, obviously, before Halloween. But I'm going so fast, I know I'm going to finish this soon. So I will be back.
All right, guys. I finished Fear Nothing by Dean Koontz. And this was a great book. This was a really good book. It wasn't terribly long. It went by very fast. I really enjoyed this book. I've talked about the synopsis of this book, but you're basically following a man who is, in more or less terms, disabled. He has a medical condition that doesn't allow his skin to repair damage to itself. So any damage from light is cumulative. And the people that have this condition don't live very long because they always end up developing skin cancer and or going blind because of damage to the eyes, because their eyes also don't have that thing that it needs to repair itself. So anyways, a lot of the book takes place at night, and you start the book right off with his father dying, and then he discovers that the mortician is doing some really weird... Mortician? Is that right? He discovers that there's some weird things that happened to his dad's body in the crematory, and he starts to investigate, and then just creepy things. He even has a dog, and the dog, even though you only get his point of view, through the whole book, the dog is in of itself its own character. It has personality, it does things, it's a very smart dog. So I just really obviously liked the fact that he had like a sidekick dog that was very smart and really had its own personality and its own traits all in it. It was a character all of its own. Another thing I loved about this book was the writing. The writing was really, really good. And that just seemed kind of like a shock to me. I don't know why I wasn't expecting the writing to be so pretty, I guess. I guess when you're reading a horror novel, it doesn't occur to you that the writing can still be like pretty and elegant because you're just expecting the whole novel to be so horrifying and maybe weird or dark or scary or whatever you read horror for. Disgusting. If you like disgusting horror scenes, you just don't really expect the writing to be very pretty and elegant, and it's just surprised me. This is actually the first book of what's supposed to be a trilogy. If the trilogy was complete, I would 100% read the second book. And actually on Goodreads, the second book is even ranked higher than this one. So I really do want to read the second book, but Dean Koontz never put the third book out. And I don't know why, but this was written in 1998. So it has been 26 years since the first book of the trilogy came out, and the third book's never come out. So I don't think he plans on finishing this trilogy, and it kind of discourages me from wanting to move forward because I don't want to read the second book and then not have the trilogy finished. So We'll see. We'll see. Maybe I'll read the second book. I don't know. I want to, but I don't know. With the trilogy not finished, I don't want to be stuck on the second book. So we'll see. But I really like this. I think if you love a horror and you have never read Dean Koontz, I would recommend you picking up this author's books. He has so many books out there. He's been writing for decades, and I plan on reading more of his books in the future.
I am done with Christopher Pike's Season of Passage. Before I get into some final thoughts, I wanted to show you my shirt. It says Haunted by my TBR, which is so accurate. I'll be back in a minute. As I said, I finished Season of Passage. I didn't record anymore because it would basically be me just reacting, since I can't really talk about what's happening. There's a lot that happens that would basically ruin the book for someone who hadn't read it, who wants to read it. Given it's from the 90s, I don't know what percentage of viewers that would really be. I still feel like I shouldn't ruin the book. A lot happens, and there was a quote from one of the main protagonists, which is Lauren Wagner. She says, can't remember the exact quote, but she says something like, this nightmare goes on and on and on, because so much happens when they're on Mars. You are also seeing the viewpoint. You have what's going on at Mars, and then you do see from the viewpoint of her fiance Terry back on Earth and her sister Jenny, and kind of a little bit about NASA, but mostly Terry and Jenny. It's hard to describe this book again without ruining too much, because there's so much going on. It felt very long. I felt when the character said the nightmare keeps going on and on and on, it did feel like it really got stretched. And I feel that from the mid to the very end, I do feel like it might have been too long, and that's what started to take away, because it was starting to be a 4 and a 5-star book for me. I was so engrossed in this book, especially in the middle of this book. I was even talking about it with my boyfriend and describing it excitedly, which I don't do all that often because he's not much of a reader. And he got interested in it and was even asking me questions about it. I didn't like the last part of the book as much. It's not that it didn't take it away. It ended up being like a 4-star book for me, but it probably would have been like a 3.75 if you want to get technical. I really enjoyed it. It didn't feel like just an okay book. That's why it's definitely over a 3 for me. I also feel like it fit perfectly in the theme of horror and Halloween creepiness, monster, like all of that felt very appropriate, especially for a Halloween challenge book. So I felt this one definitely fit better than this one. This one was very short, and it is YA. As I said, I don't remember reading this before, but this one felt, I would say, more like metaphysical new age than horror or scary creepy. There were definitely some creepy, I guess I would categorize it, moments, but I did not enjoy this one as much. I definitely enjoyed this one, and I'm glad that I ended up finishing it, even when I realized it was more of a science fiction horror, space horror. I don't know how you would categorize this. What's funny is growing up, my older brother, was obsessed with Star Trek. I know a lot about Star Trek because of him, and I know more about Star Wars, and I think I like Star Wars kind of more than Star Trek. I'm such a big nerd when it comes to a lot of that stuff. I had looked up Christopher Pike because I was curious, first, if this was still in print. I was curious as to, is he still writing books? And I felt so stupid finding out that this is a pen name. Christopher Pike is actually a character on Star Trek. And it hit me. I was like, oh my God, I completely know that name from Star Trek. And all these years, I've known about him when I was younger. It never hit me, that I remember anyway, never hit me that this was actually a Star Trek pen name. And even stranger is his real name. I laughed out loud when I saw it. His real name is Kevin Christopher McFadden. So what's funny is Frida McFadden, that's her pen name. And we don't know, maybe we'll never know what her real name is because she hides her real identity. But when I saw McFadden was his real name, it made me laugh so much. I also learned that when he originally wrote books and wanted to be an author, he wanted to write science fiction, which explains a book like this, but his editor pushed him into YA horror books because at the time they were becoming really popular and hot. And obviously he became a big name in those and he did really well. I enjoyed his books so much when I was a teen. They sucked me into reading. I mean, I was a huge reader as it is, but his I just ate up. I read so many of his. And one of the things I enjoyed about doing this vlog was getting the books from the Dayton Dollar Swap and Master of Murder. And I know I read this one and Bury Me Deep, and I'm fairly certain I read this one. So at some point I feel like I want to reread these just to feel that nostalgic feeling that I wasn't able to get from the Midnight Club, since apparently I didn't read that one. The other thing about this, the reason why I was gonna DNF it, I didn't really want to read, at the time I didn't think I wanted to read like a space horror book. And what changed my mind doesn't always persuade me, but I looked it up on Goodreads when I started reading and I was like, is this going to be just a bad book? Or, you know, maybe I'm just not in the mood for science fiction horror. And the rating was 4.15 and I saw a lot of 5-star ratings. I was like, that's interesting. And as you know, a lot of people, we all have our own opinions on books when we're reading them for why we are giving the star ratings. One person might think this is a 1-star, another person might think it's a 5-star. I'm somewhere in the middle. So it's just interesting to me sometimes when you see a rating and then you read it and you don't always agree with it. This one was pretty close, 4.15. It's very close to what I would have rated it. So I think that's usually what happens, is Goodreads ratings are kind of near where people end up rating them anyway. So thank you for watching as we do our Halloween challenge. I can't remember what Amanda picked for her 90s. I don't even know if she told me what she picked for her 90s book. And I'm curious to see how hers went. I know she's done already because I was just going to read this one, which would have went super fast. And I was just so disheartened by it that I had to read another one. I could have read another YA one, which would have went super fast, but I really wanted to try an adult version. And I'm glad I did, because this actually went well. It could have went really badly and it started to look like it was going to go very badly, but it ended up turning out successful. So I am glad that I read this. And for this one, if you like science fiction, I don't know, a lot of our viewers really like basic science fiction. This is, I would say, science fiction horror. I wouldn't say just science fiction, but they do reference Martian Chronicles. If you are interested in any of that, I think this would be for you, especially if you like things that are just horrifying, because it would fit pretty well in just horror too, because this book had a lot of horrifying moments. There's one scene I kept thinking about. It was the one I was telling my boyfriend, and it's after they get to Mars, and it's just, I was like riveted and just horrified at what was happening. I felt like I was watching a movie where you get that adrenaline from watching a horror movie, like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? It was just really good. Even though the ending didn't stand up to how I felt in the middle of the book, I still think this is really worth reading. Even the quote on the back said, "This is Pike's best book to date. It keeps you turning pages constantly until the last one, and then wishing there were more." And I definitely was quickly turning pages, especially in the middle of the book. But as it started to get to the end, I felt like, is it ever gonna end? Like, this nightmare just keeps going. Like, there's just so many horrifying things that keep happening. So definitely a good read. Keep your eye out. We have another Halloween challenge coming, actually 2 more coming after this. We are getting in the mood for Halloween, so keep your eye out for that. And until next time.